Welcome to Spoiler Peace Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, and my pronouns are he, him.
My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Dave Riedel. My pronouns are he, him. I write and talk about movies, and I am also a member of the Boston Online...
Huzzah,
Yes,
you
you are.
are.
Yeah, and I think 400 some odd episodes in, everybody knows what I meant when I blah-blahed through it.
Yes. Yeah.
But what if it's their first time listening?
What, you just
Then they
getting
just
around
gotta
to
roll
it
with
now? I mean, Jesus.
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
episode 415. Why not? All right. So on this week's episode, we have two movies we're going to talk about. But before we get to those, I want to mention that over on our Patreon, we are talking about the winner of our second poll for this month. We did a poll on LGBTQ films for Pride Month. And we talked about, yay Pride.
Yeah.
We talked about the winner of our poll, which was 120 beats per minute, 120 BPM, or 120 battements par minute en français.
Yeah, brush up on your French, everyone.
Yeah. I know I certainly butchered that pronunciation.
That's okay.
It's sad, though, because you didn't in the Patreon.
See, now it's the main show and I'm all over the place. So we talked about 120 BPM. It's a really great conversation. And so, yeah, if you're a patron, definitely check that out. And if you're not a patron, consider joining. Go to patreon.com/spoilerpiece and you can sign up to get exclusive audio like this week's episode on 120 BPM. And you can also vote in polls and other good stuff.
Woo!
Oh, yeah. So we got two movies this week. We're going to be talking about Wildhood and Mad God, which definitely have some interesting names. But we're going to start first with Wildhood, which is a road trip movie. It is written and directed by Breton Hanam. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I'll give you the one sentence IMDb, and I've already spotted something wrong about it. So here we go.
Oh.
Two brothers embark on a journey to find their birth mother after their abusive father had lied for years about her whereabouts. Along the way, they reconnect with their indigenous heritage and make a new friend. So, a few things wrong with this. It is two brothers. Both of those brothers have different mothers. And as far as I'm aware, only one of them is indigenous. The other one I don't believe is indigenous.
That is correct.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still brothers, though.
Yes,
I don't
they are
think that
brothers.
that's a mistake per se, but yes, it's not, doesn't clarify it as accurately as what's happening.
Right. So we've got Link, who is indigenous, and he's been told by his white father that his mom died years ago. And his dad's a real piece of shit, just a real abusive scumbag who beats the crap out of him and his brother Travis. He locks up in the opening of the film. Link and Travis are stealing copper from a construction site, copper pipes to sell. And then they get caught by the cops and arrested. And then the dad is mostly just mad because they went ahead without his go ahead to go steal the copper first. And then he beats the crap out of them and locks up Link's dirt bike. So Link gets pissed off and goes to try and find the key in his dad's room, locks his dad out of the room, and then finds a pile of envelopes that are like birthday cards from his mom. And he thought she was dead and he's pissed off. And so he grabs his brother and they leave. Not before setting setting the dad's truck on fire, which is deserved.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And then they take off on the road. They're running from their dad. They're wandering around. And then they meet a guy on the road. I believe his name is pronounced Buzzme.
I don't remember, but that shouldn't surprise you.
And so he's also indigenous, and he's Mi'kmaq, like Link is. And so they get to know each other, and it's a part road trip, part coming of age, part coming out movie, because we find out that Buzzme, or Buzzmy, I think is how you pronounce it. We find out that he is Two-Spirit, which for those who are not aware, it's an indigenous label to describe gender and sexuality. It can include people who are gay, bisexual, lesbian, queer, and it's kind of like part of a unique, from what I read about it, I read the press notes because I wanted to get this right. It's described as binding historical collective to indigenous identity. It honors the duality of male/female, non-gendered, and non-conforming expressions of gender. This is quoting the press notes. And according to the notes, this can describe sexuality, gender, or both.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's just interesting. It's a little different than how I've always been told.
And I believe the writer-director is Two-Spirit as well.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
They are. And so is Joshua Ojik, who portrays Buzzme.
I didn't know any of that, so thank you for filling me in.
Sure, you're welcome.
Yeah.
No, and thank you, Evan. I'm glad you read that. I just was surprised because I'm like, oh, that's a little bit different. But I also, I want to say, if I am correct, and I may be wrong, I think different tribes may have different
interpretations.
Yes. And not every tribe does have Two-Spirit, which I think is interesting too. But anyway, yes.
So yeah, it's Link, and Buzzmy. They fall for each other and they travel together and eventually they find Link's mom and, fall in with a group of people there. And I would say it's a heartwarming coming of age road trip coming out movie. But I'm curious what you two have to say about this film. And I'll put Megan, I'm putting you on the spot first.
Oh, okay. So I initially did not like this film. I think the beginning with the father, I don't think the father's a very good actor. It's brutal. Yes. And it's obviously intentionally so. But there was something about it that felt artificial. It didn't feel, there was something that lacked authenticity for me. But as soon as Link and his brother hit the road and they meet Buzzme, I was like, oh, now this film has found its groove. Now we're getting into where it shines. And I think that's where it really just blossoms, opens up just like Link does. And I really liked seeing how their relationship unfolds. And I loved seeing Michael Grey Eyes. I know we always talk about him. He's wonderful. He should be in everything. He's so good. He breezes in, breezes out, and gives a wonderful performance. I just adore him. He is. I wanted way more. I was so sad that he was already gone. I was like, oh, yep, that's always the way. Unless he's a lead, I feel like he breezes in and out, and I'm always like craving more because he's such a great actor. But yeah, and I was really excited to see this because there are not enough Indigenous and First Nations films out there that we get to see, unfortunately, even though there are Indigenous and First Nations filmmakers. And I love that this is a film written and directed by a Two-Spirit person. And I love that there is a queer lead and a Two-Spirit queer lead or co-lead. And it's really important story to tell. And I love a road trip film. So yeah, I think this really, even though I was initially like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this, I think it really comes into its own and really finds its rhythm and tells a very, very beautiful story. And I think it's really lovely. And it highlights the importance of chosen family. It highlights the importance of finding community, even if that's not where you thought you were going to find it. And yeah, I just found this a very moving film as well and really ended up enjoying it.
Oh, I'm glad. How about you, Dave?
Well, mea culpa, I didn't see the entire film. I had stuff going on this week, as you both know.
You had a day and a week.
And a week,
but
yeah.
For the part that you did see, what roughly where did you leave off?
I roughly left off when they were having the conversation in the truck about learning the dances. So.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, for the powwow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I Yeah, I think part of the reason I tuned out and didn't finish it is because the abuse at the beginning was so.
It's jarring.
It's a lot, and I just didn't. And I knew the story was going somewhere else, and I knew that it was a queer story because it's interesting. Link's uncle knows that he's queer. If you pick that up, because he says in one of the opening scenes is like, "Oh, is there a girl you're into or anyone?" And it's like, "Oh, his uncle knows," and wisely is keeping it from his father, I guess. Although I think doesn't his father use it like a? He does. Okay, yeah. So maybe his father does know, but.
I think his father has an inkling or is trying to use masculinity to instill fear or something into him. But yes, I got that too.
The interesting thing about it, though, is Link is physically such that if I were Link's dad, I'm not really sure I'd want to take him on, because if you're 25 years younger and taller and, probably stronger, eventually that's going to turn around and haunt you. He's either going to beat you or he's going to burn your truck, and Link burns his truck. So,
yeah,
that was very satisfying.
Yeah. So I agree with you, Megan, about the father's performance. I just thought, and I don't know if it was because it was supposed to be so one note or whatever. But I did feel like the movie got better once they got on the road. In particular, that first scene in the, I guess it's a convenience store when the white store owner is like, "What are you native kid or First Nations kids, or where are your parents?" or what? I don't know what he says. But he's a racist asshole. And then just going, and then the halfway house where Link's mother was, the old weird judgmental Christian lady who's serving them tea.
Yeah.
Just, I wasn't in the frame of mind, and this is not a criticism of the movie. This is about me. I was not in a place to watch this, and so I just didn't. And that's not like I said, it's not a reflection on the movie. That's just where, that's how it ended up. I am glad that it kind of has a happy ending, though.
It does.
How is Link's mother? Is she cool, or is she in trouble, or what?
She's cool.
Okay.
She's kind of found her center and found her place where she belongs. And she is happy to see him. And we don't get all of it kind of resolved at once, but it's like they sit and they talk and they hug, and she, meets Travis and meets Buzzmy, and it seems like it's heading in a good direction. It seems like they'll probably put down roots there and stay there, and so it's definitely a happy ending and leading happy, and not trying to wrap everything neat in a bow, but at least he knows his mom is alive. He's found her. He's had a chance to talk to her and explain why he's there, why he needs to be there and be with her, and why he wants to get to know her.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Yay.
That's so interesting. I don't know if I got the sense that they were going to set roots down there, but I totally see why you got that vibe, Evan. But I also kind of got the sense simultaneously that it almost doesn't matter if they did or not. Like, he got the resolution he needed one way or another.
Yeah.
And so that was very satisfying too.
Yeah, it was. Like Megan, I wish that Michael Grey stuck around for longer in this movie. Although when he shows up, he's driving a sweet van.
Yeah, he is.
It's painted with some amazing mural that's got a horse with a rainbow mane and sunglasses on it. It is fucking sweet. And then you find out he's a pastry chef, and he's got a wedding cake in the back or something.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Here, have some cake."
I love that he's the cordon bleu trained pastry chef. It's amazing.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I remember, yeah.
Right. And then you find out that his mother worked at a drag bar or queer bar.
Yeah.
And I was reading that the person who plays Mother Mary, who's in charge of the bar, is someone who's a representative of a Two-Spirit association or something like that helped collaborate on the film. So I thought that was really cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I liked this movie. I think my only real complaint is involving the pacing to me, which felt kind of disjointed. I didn't really have so much a problem with the beginning. The performance, I feel like it's kind of over the top of the dad, but he's also supposed to be a shitty, abusive guy. It is jarring how graphic the violence is.
Yeah.
So that's, I totally understand being like kind of like thrown off by that. But I think for me, the pacing is why I had trouble like locking into it as a whole. But I found like individual moments like really satisfying, and like overall, I was like, I'm really glad I watched this. Like, I'm really glad I saw the story. I'm really glad I got to know these characters and saw them kind of grow and change. And like Link, you know, masking a lot of his pain with like anger and aggression, and like seeing him kind of like learn to let go and to trust other people. And seeing his younger brother also kind of using that like anger and assholishness as a way to kind of like deflect, and see him start to kind of like settle in, like with the scene where they show up at the house and they're all cooking dinner together as a, you know, a group of people, and they're laughing and eating, and it's just to see them all, it's just like you could tell that there's like a weight off of all of their shoulders. Like they've found some place where they feel comfortable and where they feel like they belong. And seeing Link also just learn more about his language, his culture, and learn to embrace that. Like when he shows up, you know, he's learned at least some basic stuff to say to his mom. Like he says in Mi'kmaq, like, I'm your son, I'm here. Like, and I thought that was really cool that he like learned some stuff, so when he got there he had something to say.
I agree with you, Evan, and you reminded me of one of my, if not my favorite scene. I love the scene where Basme is teaching Link some of the powwow dancing that he does. And then his brother wakes up and he's like, you look like a douchebag. And then Link like storms off because he's like, fuck. And he's like, I'm probably in some internalized, you know, queer phobia, not being, you know, cool or masculine enough. And I love that Basme says to him, like, what's your problem?
Yeah.
Like, it's nice that he calls him out on that. And I love that because the two of them clearly have been raised by such an abusive asshole who is using masculinity as a weapon against them. And you know, even though they're both very loving and different than their father, it's still hard to escape those trappings that they've been taught. And so it's really nice to see them each embracing their vulnerability and each, you know, kind of eschewing that macho bullshit, which is really great to see. The one scene, and I'm really curious what you think about this, Evan. I've been dying. Dave, I wish you had seen it too, because I would be dying to know your opinion on it too. The one scene I had a problem with was the sex scene. And I'm like, what is this music that they're playing during the sex scene? It felt really creepy, like a thriller, like almost in a way that was like not consensual, even though it appears to be. So yeah, I was wildly uncomfortable, and I was like excited because I was like, "Oh, we're getting a queer sex scene. How cool! Great, awesome!" But there's not the right amount of fun or tenderness or joy in that scene, and I wanted to know what your take on it was, because I was bothered by it.
Yeah, I was also a little bit uncomfortable in that scene, and I agree with you. The music didn't feel right. I think also just the general setting of it. It's pouring rain, like almost like thunderstormy, and they're like I don't know, it's just something about they're like leaning up against, you know, a rock face, and it just, I don't know, it didn't look like it was a pleasant thing. And I agree, it seemed like it was like borderline consensual, but then like there's a scene the next day where there's like Link is kind of staring off, and you know there's like the worry of like, oh, did he not like that or whatever, and he's like, no, I liked it. I was into it. But like kind of got in my own head and some other, you know, I've got a lot of other shit on my mind. It's like, okay, well, I'm glad that we got that exchange. I'm glad that we learned that it was not like he didn't then like have sex and then like spiral into like a self-loathing thing.
Right. But yeah, it just was, I agree with you. I still just felt like I needed more. And not that we always need everything so explicitly stated, but I feel like here I did. Mm-hmm. Here I needed to know what was going on in his head. Was it like internalized homophobia? Was it just that he was freaked out? Because when Bassmite asks him like about enjoying it, he's like, oh, I did. And he's like, and he's like, well, you've had sex before, right? Or he's like, you've done that before, right? And he's like, not like that. And so I was like, just the way he said it, I was like, it was kind of like, yeah, it was just a bit off-putting. So I wish there had kind of been, I just wish
more
that either the scene had been
consent. As
right.
we like
I want
to say.
Enthusiastic consent. Yes. Right. Enthusiastic consent is crucial.
There is a moment like during or like where he asks Link, like, is that okay? Or, you know, like there is some there, but it feels so quiet in the moment because it's like everything out, like the pouring rain and the music were kind of like almost like drowning out the character moment there.
Yeah. The cinematography and the score are in complete opposition to what is actually happening on screen. And so I'm like, wait, I'm getting these very conflicting vibes here. Yeah, it was very concerning for me. So yeah, so that scene, I wish it had been completely redone. Or if it's trying to convey something, if it's trying to convey how Link is conflicted, I needed a lot more dialogue or something following that.
Well, yeah, because I mean, like, you know, they're leaning up against the wall, so it's not easy really to see them, or even in parts of that to see what Link's face is and what he is thinking.
Right. And the camera's not on his face at all. So you're right. We don't see his pleasure. We don't see anything. Yeah. So I think that was a very poorly shot, very poorly framed and constructed scene.
Well, it seems like we're on the same page there. I'm glad you brought it up because I remember feeling like I was a little bit uncomfortable as I was watching it and maybe not having an easy time articulating. So now that I feel like we've talked about it, I'm like, okay, yep, I can point to some key things that made that scene less than ideal.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad we talked about it then. Yeah, because it was really bothering me. Like, what is happening here? But it was unfortunate because I'm like, oh, I don't like the beginning. I don't like this scene, but everything else I really am enjoying. So yeah.
Overall, enjoyed the movie and was really glad I watched it, despite, like I said, the pacing and this particular scene that apparently you and I both feel the same way about.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do we have anything else to say about Wildhood?
I guess I should finish it.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Noted.
All right. So we are moving on to the second movie that we're talking about, which is a horror film. It's written and directed by Phil Tippett, who, if you're not familiar, is a well-known animator and visual effects person who's been working on all different kinds of movies that you've probably seen. It's his directorial debut. This particular project has been 30 years in the making. It's like a pet project he's been working on for a while, and I guess he did a Kickstarter at some point to help finish it. But Tippett has worked on special effects for films like Jurassic Park, RoboCop, the original Star Wars film, Starship Troopers. He'd also invented a style of stop motion animation called Go Motion. So if anybody was going to attempt to make an animated film that's stop motion animation, this was going to be the guy to do it. So IMDb has a very weird, vague summary, which I'm going to read, but it's kind of hard to really succinctly summarize this movie. A corroded diving bell descends amidst a ruined city, and the assassin emerges from it to explore a labyrinth of bizarre landscapes inhabited by freakish denizens.
Not wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
Not
that's
wrong.
But there's also a lot
that's
more.
as close as you can get, probably, for a one sentence.
Yeah.
For a log line.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If I was taking notes on this, like this was a piece of paper, I would probably put 3 underlines under freakish denizens.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know whether I need to, but just in case I do, I apologize for picking this movie for us.
Oh, I wanted to see it, and I don't think there's an apology needed at all. I thought this was great.
I mean, I thought it was great from an animation standpoint because I think stop motion and go motion is fascinating. And what I think is so fascinating about it is how, even though it looks, in particular stop motion, but even though it looks real, it doesn't look real. So there's an extra there's an extra eeriness to Ed 209. You know, because it's stop motion. But there's also one of the things I did appreciate. But by the way, there's no use in discussing the plot in this movie because try to figure it out, not a chance. That main
Even moment to moment, I was like not sure what was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually had kind of a hard time with this, which I didn't think I would, but it was because of the crying baby, you know, over and over and over and over.
Oh, I love the crying baby.
And then of course the crying baby like looked even uglier than the baby from Eraserhead. So, you know.
And then it's smushed into glitter dust.
Yeah.
Yep. Into crystals. Pretty rainbow crystals.
The protagonist, I don't know if you could call him or it or whatever the protagonist with, you know, the helmet and the goggles reminded
Oh, the assassin.
The assassin reminded me of something out of like Castle Wolfenstein.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Love it.
But it is a fascinating piece of work that I never need to see again.
that's how I feel about it.
But
I want to hear it.
Yeah, I mean the goopiness alone was enough for me. So yeah, I didn't dislike it, but at the same time, I'm glad I watched it. But at the same time, I was just like, I didn't really realize what I was getting into based on how much of Phil Tippett's work I've seen. You know, I mean, this is. You know, I think just by nature of being a stop motion animator, you have to have a little bit of wackiness in you, or I don't want to say a screw loose, but you've got to you think differently from other people and artists, and that is on display here 100%. So
right, I mean, if you're the kind of person who, you know, saw Ray Harryhausen movies as a kid and were like, I want to do that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's
sure.
Phil Tippett.
Yes.
I mean, like he was, you know, I saw somewhere he was, you know, describing himself as a kid who was like always like, you know, drawing and painting and doing, you know, it's like someone who is a crafty kind of person is the kind of person that has patience for stop motion.
Man, you gotta
and
have
maybe
patience.
like a little bit of a weirdo. And I'm not saying that in a pejorative sense, but like someone, like you said, who thinks a little bit differently and is not afraid to like push some boundaries and do some stuff that they're like, I think this is cool, like me, the animator, but people might think this is a little fucked up when they watch it.
Yeah. Megan, what did you think? You said you loved it, I think.
Yeah.
I didn't say I loved it. But that's not, I'm not like, I'm being pedantic. I'm being very specific. Like, no, I thought this was great. I think it was fantastic. Yeah, but I also kind of feel the same way. Like, I don't think I need to ever watch it again because it is so disturbing. But maybe I did love it. I don't know. Maybe you're very prescient, David. Maybe I do love it because watching it, I love that it's almost entirely wordless. Yeah. And that very much reminds me of a few of my favorite indie video games, which are wordless. And I love that. And so you really have to have, obviously, the visuals tell the story, which they very much do. And I found it fascinating. I found the imagery fascinating. I found the puppetry fascinating. I really loved when the second assassin comes down and the diving bell is descending and we're seeing things and it's very quick, but I'm like, oh, that looks like the White House. Oh, that looks like the Brooklyn Bridge. And in one scene we see the Statue of Liberty and I'm like, ooh, this is like an apocalyptic hodgepodge of so many American iconography, architectural elements and statues and things. And I'm like, this is fascinating. And I love an apocalyptic story. Not that there's really necessarily a story here. Right. It's more just kind of like being... Right. It's more like being assaulted by a barrage of images, which I'm okay with. But yeah, but I think it's whatever loose story it's telling. And it feels more kind of like a morality commentary on society rather than an actual story. But I'm really here for the fact that it seems very anti-militaristic, very anti-war. It's very pro-pacifism and very nihilistic in the sense that, oh, well, here we go. It's the end of the world. Everything's terrible. Everything's destroyed. We're going to reboot the world, with a baby and make it pretty rainbow kaleidoscopic crystals. And we're going to have it be a utopia. And then, oh no, everything turns to shit and everything falls apart again. And it feels very salient in how we're destroying our world and constant wars, and as much as things change, they stay the same. Yeah, so I really dug its visceral visuals and just its nightmare fuel. Like, it is nonstop nightmare fuel with its bulging bloody eyes and the chest being cracked open of the assassin and like jewels and books and sort of weird spinal cord coming out. Like, I was here for it. It's so disturbing and so wild and such an intense ride. It was a ride I wanted to ride. I was so glad I saw it. Yeah, but I don't know if I need to see it again. But maybe, I don't know. Maybe I did love this. I was really into it. Yeah, I was really, really into it. I thought it was absolutely fascinating.
I liked when Alex Cox showed up. I thought that was pretty hilarious.
Was pretty funny. Yeah.
Because I didn't know there were any type of live action portions to this. I thought it was exclusively stop motion, and I read somewhere that it was like some type of puppet situation with the actors that were involved. But man, it was freaking weird.
Yeah, but that was definitely Alex Cox. So, what I think is interesting is I listened to an extended interview with Phil Tippett talking about this, and two things. One, when he finished it, he had to check himself into a hospital.
Oh.
Yeah. And two, part of the reason he finished it is because he had a bunch of young animators working with him who had never worked with practical effects. And they were like, how do you do this? And he's like, you want to help me finish this movie? And so that's, he taught them how to do all of this stuff. I don't know how many there were. I think he said something like, at first, there were like 25 guys, and then there were 18, and then there were 12. And by the time we finished, there were like 6 of us. And I can definitely see that being the case, given how labor intensive this must have been. And how I think he said he shot the first 3 minutes by himself in like 1987 or something like that.
Yeah.
So, you got to be really committed to your art to work on something for that long, and for it to be as consistent as it is. I mean, I guess you could go back and watch the footage that you've shot and be like, okay, this is what we did. But at the same time, the way things evolve, you even like the few people who, stop animation is shot differently from how it used to be, so it's just like all the things that change. I don't know enough about it to speak about it like with intelligence or anything like that. So, but it was. I think the backstory to this movie is just as interesting as story. I don't know why I keep using that word. I think the backstory to this movie is just as interesting as the movie itself. And Phil Tippett's a really articulate, sharp guy, so it's just fun to listen to him talk.
I love that you shared that, Dave.
Thank you.
So thank you. I want to hear more. I want to go find that interview now.
I can tell you right where it is after. So it's he talked to Mark Maron for like
Mark Maron, right?
Course.
Yeah.
Anytime you got an extended interview with somebody who's almost famous or famous in his or her art, but not to like regular people, maybe Mark Maron. So
yeah, probably makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because just reading a little bit of the background from the press notes, I was so fascinated.
Yeah.
Like, it's so intriguing. Like, the fact that this took 30 years because he put it aside. Like, that's just incredible. So, yeah, I love that. I love that these young artists were craving to know how to do practical effects, because it is something that's gotten away from so much now, which is so sad because it is such an art form.
Yeah.
But, yeah, love that.
Yeah. And we should mention that 30 years, not in a row.
Right. Yeah.
No.
I heard that he had almost abandoned it at a certain point.
Yeah.
And then decided to keep going with it. So
yeah. I don't know. It reminds me of that Stephen Wright joke. He's like, I go to the 24-hour store at 2:00 in the morning, and there's a guy outside locking it up. And I said, hey, the store is 24 hours. And the guy says, yeah, not in a row. So
that's a great Stephen Wright impression.
that was off the top of my head.
I was going to say that too,
way.
Yeah. Bravo, Dave. Bravo.
Now we just need to hear you do K. Billy's super sounds of the 70s.
K. Billy's super sounds of the 70s. I can only do them.
That's Steelers wheel.
Yeah. I can only do them spontaneously. I cannot do celebrity voices, with any thought. Like if you want me to sing Elvis Costello, it's just got to come out. You can't say, hey, Dave, sing Elvis Costello and then have me do it. It just doesn't work. So, and yes, I can do Elvis Costello perfectly, by the way.
Oh.
But on
now
your
I'm
terms.
intrigued.
And Michael McDonald. So, yeah.
We've done Michael
I'm
McDonald
more
on
excited.
the show before.
And the Bikini Inspector. Don't forget that.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I recently had an old spoiler piece reference. I was in a store where Steve Perry came on, and all I could think of was one of our favorites when we said that the lyrics to "Oh Sherry" were cinnamon gum.
Yeah. Cinnamon gum. Yeah.
Evan, I thought you meant somebody came up to you in a store and was talking about spoiler piece. I'm like, that's the greatest thing ever.
Oh, I wish. I wish that happened. No, I just listened to Steve Perry and the CBS recently and then thought of us saying that the lyrics were cinnamon gum. Yeah.
Good times.
I would definitely echo a lot of the things that you two are saying. I don't think I need to see this again. I was a little bit worried going in. This would be kind of a one note kind of story in terms of like how it's presented. And in some ways it kind of was and wasn't. So I think this is just a visually impressive film. It is just absolutely striking. The animation, the camera work, the art direction are just impeccable.
Yes.
The score is utterly creepy.
Score is great.
Oh,
Forgot
it's
to
so
mention that.
good.
And then how at the
So
unsettling.
and then how
you.
at the end over the closing credits is like leap deep deep deep. It's like
Oh,
what?
so disturbing.
Just like kind of this weird happy music over the closing credits. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think like overall the narrative for me felt kind of like, let's just look at gross images and suffering for shock value purpose. Like I think of the scene where the guys are their heads covered and they're getting electrocuted. They're on like side by side electric chairs.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of like things getting eaten or squished.
There's a lot of squishing.
So much squishing.
Squishing the baby, the crying baby. There's just a lot of like gross, icky stuff. There's like some monster that's got like tit balls on it. It's weird. They look like boobs, but also look like testicles.
Yes.
It's just gross stuff. And so in that way, I felt like it was kind of one note to me in a way that I was worried it was going to be. That I was like, all right, I just got to see like gross stuff over and over again and like viscera and goopiness. But there are some really poignant moments of commentary in this that I feel like I was able to latch onto, and stuff that you were saying before, Megan, about like the war industrial complex and like just showing all the like people who are essentially just like disposable slaves that are like toiling away on this like the war machines.
Yeah.
And also just seeing how we dehumanize each other and treat each other as disposable husks, which is like basically what the people are in this movie. They're husks. They're like walking coils of like fur and like sticks or something. It's like the best way I can describe them. And there's that scene I can think of where there's just piles and piles of bodies and there's a crane that's just grabbing the bodies and picking them up and like loading them onto a train car for God knows what purpose. So it definitely has something to say, and I think it does have moments that like really work for me. But I was not as big a fan of this.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. Not that you weren't as big a fan, which is totally fine, obviously. But like, no, but I love what you picked up on it. And yeah, I was definitely getting very much Metropolis vibes, like the kind of just shuffling along, kind of zombie people. Husks, I think, is a perfect description of them. It's interesting because I was definitely getting other references to other films and plays and stories. Like when we see the women in cloaks kind of sewing together the map again, and that felt very much kind of like the Fates, kind of like weaving the tapestry of fate, which feels kind of like Shakespearean and mythological. Yeah. And so I think it's like pulling from other things, but yet it is so unique and innovative too, that a lot of it feels familiar image wise, but yet also feels like it's charting its own course, which I really love. But yeah.
There's a particular sequence that really reminded me of Terminator, actually. It's like the scene where he's driving along in the car and there's like all the explosions and things. It felt eerily reminiscent of the scenes in Terminator where you see into the future and they're like riding along in trucks shooting at Terminators and like dodging laser bolts and things.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that because I definitely got that. Yeah, I got Fury Road, like with the War Boys. Like, yeah, I love it. Love it. Maybe I did love this movie.
So, it definitely keeps things interesting. Mad God, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Never a dull moment in this movie.
Oh, there's the obelisk like in 2001.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Ooh.
Glad you said that.
Oh boy, so much of this that you keep bringing things up and I'm like, oh yeah. And, but if you, like, I never would have remembered the obelisk on my own. I think just because there's so much, it's all visual, right? So,
yeah.
There's a lot to forget also. Of course, there are some things I will never forget. Squishing baby into bright confetti, but
it's kind of hard to miss that.
Love it,
especially after you hear the baby crying for so long, and you hear you see that weird plague doctor person walking down endless hallways to bring them to the final destination, which you think is like, oh, they're gonna like put the baby aside. No, just squish it and make juice out of it.
Yep.
Yeah, but her or their expression is really interesting because I'm just going to say her. When she goes to lie down, like in her cave room, whatever that area is, and then like she kind of looks at peace, but then she hears the baby screeching even louder, and like her eye is like just shocked awake, and that was kind of it was interesting because it's like almost like a moment of pathos or fear or both from her. It was interesting.
Yeah. It's funny, like a couple of weeks ago or last week or something, there was a Saturday Night Live video called Now I'm Up, and it's about people who have insomnia. And there's a moment when it's just like her lying down and, she's kind of having a moment of peace, and it's Chris Redd, and he says, and I'm just falling asleep and I'm feeling good. And then I realize someday I'm going to die. Now I'm up, So, I don't know.
Oh, insomnia. My old sweet friend. Mortal enemy.
Right. Yeah, I don't think this one definitely seems like it's insomnia triggering and not something you watch before bedtime.
No.
No. Yeah. But it also, I know I mentioned this earlier, but I keep thinking about it, like thinking about all the references and all the allusions to other things. And it really reminds me of, like I said, sometimes things just kind of happen separately, simultaneously, but it really reminds me of the indie video game Inside, which is such a body horror. It turns into such a body horror game, and like this disturbing blob that's like a mass of multiple bodies, and that kind of Evan, as you described it, the creature with the boobs and the boob testicle mashup. Yeah, it very much reminded me of that visually. I'm like, oh, this is so weird and interesting. Anyway, I said it before, I'll say it again. Nightmare fuel.
Yes, that is. I was trying to remember the exact phrase you used. I'm glad you repeated it because that is like the perfect description of this. Not very long movie. It's like an hour and 23 minutes or something, but it is pure nightmare fuel, like you said, all the way through, start to finish.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that kind of bombastic, fiery opening. I loved it. I'm like, oh, we're strap in for a ride. Yeah, talking about it more, I'm liking it. I might have to rewatch this.
Oh man. Oof.
I'm a masochist.
Stronger
What can
than both
I
of
say?
us.
Yeah.
No, I just like to torture myself.
Somehow I feel like the characters of the movie would like that.
I think they would, or certainly appreciate it at the minimum.
All right. So we've talked about 2 movies this week. Let's do a quick recap. We talked about Wildhood earlier, which is going to be available to stream on Hulu. Dave, I don't know if you care to make a ruling since you've only seen part of the movie.
Yeah,
So
I'm going to take a pass on that.
As Megan, which you recommend that people see Wildhood.
Yeah. I think there's some issues with it, but yes, I would. I think there are enough good things here.
I'd agree. I think we've covered some things that didn't quite work for us. Some of them a little bit different, but overall, I think it's definitely worth watching for the story, the performances, and representation, as always. And
absolutely,
yeah, another film to add to the canon of Indigenous cinema. I feel like we've covered some good stuff over the last couple of years, especially coming out of Canada.
Yeah,
we have some interesting Canadian Indigenous films between like Beans and Night Raiders, and I feel like there's something else. Blood Quantum. So definitely check out Wildhood, especially if you're into those other movies. And Mad God. I feel so weird recommending this movie to anyone. It's unique, that's for sure. And if you feel like you can handle the viscera of it, then I would say watch it. But what about you two?
Yeah, I mean, why not? You know?
Yeah, I recommend it too. I mean, I think it depends. It depends on who I was talking to. I might not, blanketly recommend this to everyone, just depending. Or if I did, I would certainly give them a warning. Like, you have to like really gory horror.
Your mileage may vary, you could say.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, definitely. Yes. But I would recommend it. I think it's great. So I would recommend it.
Yep.
Nice. And then Mad God is available to stream on Shudder. So that's where you can catch that. So Hulu and Shudder are the places where you can find this week's movies. So that wraps things up for this week's episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. Want to say a huge thank you to our editor, Otto Clamor. Otto, thank you for making us sound great week after week. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Otto.
Thanks, Otto.
You can find us wherever you get podcasts, but you can also find us at our website, which is spoilerpiece.com. You can find us on social media. We are at SpoilerPiece on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and TikTok. And we're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. And if you want to get in touch with us, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can send us an email, spoilerpiece@gmail.com. Tell us that we're crazy for thinking that Mad God is good, or maybe you're a little weird too and you liked Mad God.
Yeah.
So
we're the weirdos.
Yep. We'd love to hear from you, but you can also give us a call
at 862. Megan, go.
I'm sorry. At 862-21-PEACE.
We didn't discuss it beforehand. So
it's true. We didn't. But you can leave us a voicemail and you can talk about Mad God or Wildhood or pretty much anything else you want. You can just call us and ask us general questions. Sometimes people ask our opinions about food. We always love to talk about food as well.
Oh, yes.
Some of us have some controversial opinions about food. I'm not going to name any names.
Oh, I was gonna out one of our opinions, but okay, I won't.
What? Hold on. Controversial opinions about food. What is this?
Oh, come on! You know it's Evan.
Oh, right.
In his cereal position.
Yeah. I just wanted to
just have to listen to a past episode.
I remember. I just wanted someone to say it on the mic. That's all.
Dave, that was a good acting job.
What do you mean? Is a cereal? What?
What?
Anyway, we'd love to hear from you folks. If you like the show, tell a friend or rate and review us. You can go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece, and that'll take you to your platform of choice. You can rate us on Apple, Spotify, etc., and it's awesome because it helps more people find the show. And if you really, really like the show, please consider joining our Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/spoilerpiece. Each week we release exclusive audio for patrons, and you can vote in polls and other good stuff. And this week we talked about the film 120 BPM, which was the winner of our Pride Month poll. So that was a really, really great conversation. And thank you, as always, to our patrons who support us. Thank you for picking 120 BPM, and thank you for listening. My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
My name is Megan Kearns. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionessWorld or on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinioness.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies and stuff, and I talk about them. You can follow me on Twitter and all that. Wait, no, I should mention that I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association because we all did that. So that, and also you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. I'm at Dave Sees Movies.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.